The Department of Justice releasing its remaining documents from the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. Deputy Attorney General Todd Bland saying the records will be posted throughout the day, including more than 2,000 videos, more than 180,000 images. Some of the material so explicit, you have to verify being an adult before you can actually access it. Many of Epstein's survivors have been publicly pushing for years to have these documents come out, but it took a law passed with near unanimous support in Congress to finally bring these documents to light. Welcome back. And here's what's flying completely under the radar right now. While the public is busy chasing headlines, reacting to tweets, and getting pulled into the latest controversy, something far more serious is unfolding quietly out of sight. Not speculation, reality. Because right now, behind locked doors, judges and high-level officials are reviewing documents the public was never meant to access. Files sealed, controlled, and hidden from everyone else. A new NPR investigation reveals the Justice Department withheld portions of the Jeffrey Epstein files that contain allegations involving President Trump, including material tied to claims that Mr. Trump sexually abused a minor and that some pages mentioning him were removed from the public record. Democrats on the House Oversight Committee called that out today, saying the DOJ's withholding of information could amount to a crime. Unredacted files, the real thing. No black bars, no hidden names, no missing pages, just raw documents referencing Trump alongside a network of powerful figures. And now, some officials who've reviewed these files are beginning to speak out. And what they're hinting at isn't reassuring. Here's where it starts. In New York, a federal judge has ordered the Justice Department to correct what he described as serious redaction errors in the Epstein-related records. Victims of Mr. Epstein have gone through unspeakable pain, and there's nobody that should say anything differently. And to the extent that there's frustration, I understand where that comes from, just from what we know about Mr. Epstein. I hope that the work that the men and women within this department have done over the past 2 months hopefully is able to bring closure. Yeah, those Jeffrey Epstein files, the ones that were supposed to finally shed light on who was connected to one of the most notorious criminals in modern history. Except something went very wrong. The government didn't just make a mistake. They botched the redaction so badly that victims' names and even images were accidentally exposed to the public. Let that sink in. The U.S. Department of Justice had one clear responsibility: protect the victims while releasing the truth. And somehow they failed at both. That's when Richard Berman stepped in, and he was not pleased. He openly criticized the government's handling of the documents, ordered immediate corrections, and forced them to fix what should have never been broken in the first place. To my right is an email that was sent by the victims' lawyers to the DOJ. It was a list of names not to release. What did the DOJ do with this email? They released this email in the document production. Literally the worst thing you could do to the survivors, you did. And here's the part that says everything. Once the court got involved and the damage was addressed, the hearing itself was canceled because only then, under pressure, did they finally do their job. Breaking news now to pass along in the Jeffrey Epstein sex trafficking investigation. This afternoon, a federal judge rejected a push by the Department of Justice to unseal grand jury transcripts. This isn't just a minor mistake. It points to a deeper systemic breakdown in how the DOJ is managing one of the most high-profile document releases in recent history. Judge Richard Berman blasted that request, calling it a diversion. And Evan Perez is here with us now. And Evan, there's been a lot of speculation about President Trump being named in these files, and we're learning now the FBI actually compiled a list of allegations related to the president back in August. What are you learning, right? So this was in 2025 that the FBI compiled a list of all of these sexual assault allegations that involved the President of the United States, that some of them stretch back years, decades. He said no victims testified, only an FBI agent with hearsay knowledge of this case. He added that the information in the transcripts, quote, pales in comparison to the amount of evidence and materials that the government could release at any point. The Justice Department says it will begin giving documents to the House Oversight Committee a little later this week. But here's where things take a serious turn. On February 9th, two members of Congress, Thomas Massie and Rowana, went on CNN and made a statement that should have stopped people in their tracks. Yeah. So, what happens here when it goes, if it passes, and it does have that deluge of Republicans? I know you said today you thought 40 to 50 could potentially vote for it. Is that right? Well, I think the speakers concluded if you can't stop the parade, you might as well lead it. And so now he's saying, I want to have the vote. I do think that you could get 30, 40, 50 Republicans voting for it. Because what are we talking about? We're talking about rich and powerful men who abused young girls and told people in junior high to go recruit others to be raped or abused. That's what we're talking about. After reviewing the full unredacted Epstein files in a secure setting, they said something alarming. They believe at least half a dozen powerful individuals are being hidden behind heavy redactions. Let that sink in. At least 6 influential figures, names, and connections the public is never shown. These lawmakers didn't see the censored version. They saw the real files, the ones without the black bars. And according to them, what's been released to the public isn't just incomplete. It's a fraction of the truth. And here's what makes this even more striking. Massie, a Republican from Kentucky, and a Democrat from California. They rarely agree on anything. But in this case, they both reviewed the same material and came away with the exact same conclusion. They emerged a short time ago where they told reporters that they saw the names of at least 6 individuals, 6 men whose names were redacted that they expressed some concern about, including one that they indicated could be high up in a foreign government. Powerful people are being protected, and the public is being kept in the dark. Congressman Massie and I went to the Department of Justice to read the unredacted Epstein files. We spent about 2 hours there, and we learned that 70 to 80% of the files are still redacted. This isn't about politics. It's a rare moment where both sides agree something is being concealed by the government. There were 6 wealthy, powerful men that the DOJ hid for no apparent reason. When Congressman Massie and I pointed this out to the Department of Justice, they acknowledged their mistake. Now let's get into Donald Trump because his name is suddenly everywhere in this story. The Department of Justice has just released roughly 3 to 5 million pages tied to the Epstein files. Yes, millions, not a typo. And buried deep inside their official statement is a warning. Some of these documents include what they describe as untrue and sensationalist claims about Trump, claims that were reportedly submitted to the FBI just before the 2020 election. So think about what that means. The government is sitting on a massive archive of documents. Within it are serious allegations. At the same time, they're telling us that some of those claims are false, but they're not specifying which ones. No breakdown, no clarity, just everything released at once with a disclaimer attached. And somehow that's being framed as transparency. I think it's really time for the country to get onto something else, really. You know, now that nothing came out about me, other than it was a conspiracy against me, literally by Epstein and other people. But I think it's time now for the country to maybe get on to something. This is the game they're playing. Judges see everything. Investigators see everything. Members of Congress sitting in secure rooms see everything. But you, me, we get documents with half the names blacked out and a vague warning that some of it might not even be true. And we're just expected to trust that the people with full access are making the right decisions about what we're allowed to know. Here's where it gets serious. Even if the public never sees the full files, judges do. And in the legal system, that changes everything because unredacted evidence, real complete evidence, can still be used to build criminal cases, civil cases, and investigations even if the public never knows it exists. So when people ask, is Trump actually in danger from these files? The honest answer is maybe, because we don't know what judges are seeing behind closed doors. We don't know what investigators are finding buried inside millions of pages, but we do know this. Some very powerful people are getting nervous. A federal judge just forced the Justice Department to fix major mistakes. Members of Congress are openly hinting that powerful men are being protected. That's not normal. And it tells you this story isn't going away. Now, let's talk about what unredacted files actually mean. Most people hear that and think it's just paperwork with fewer black bars. It's not. It's the difference between reading a story with half the sentences missing and reading the entire thing. It's the difference between knowing something happened and knowing exactly who did it, when, how, and who else was involved. In a courtroom, that difference can decide everything. Freedom or prison. When the government releases documents, they redact them. Names, dates, locations gone. Sometimes that makes sense. Protecting victims, protecting intelligence sources. But sometimes redactions are used to protect powerful people from embarrassment or worse, and the public has no way of knowing which is which because we can't see what's under those black bars. But judges can, investigators can, certain members of Congress can, and right now that's exactly what's happening. We're seeing one version of the story, they're seeing another, and the gap between those two versions, it's massive. Lawmakers like Thomas Massie and Rowana haven't named names. They can't. The files are classified, but they've made one thing clear. What the public is seeing is not the full story. And when a Republican and a Democrat are both saying that at the same time, that's not politics. That's a warning. Now here's where things get messy. In New York, Judge Richard Berman stepped in and publicly called out the government. Why? Because the DOJ made serious redaction mistakes. We're talking about unredacted victim names, even images accidentally exposed. Think about that. The very agency responsible for protecting sensitive information failed so badly that a federal judge had to force them to fix it. And he didn't do it quietly, he made it public. Translation: I had to embarrass you into doing your job. And that raises a dangerous question. If they're messing up redactions meant to protect victims, what else are they getting wrong? What names are being hidden that shouldn't be? What information is being buried? Because this isn't just about one man. This is about a network of wealthy, connected, influential individuals tied to Jeffrey Epstein. Some are victims, some are witnesses, and some may have been involved. And here's the key. Many of those people have the power to make the Justice Department very careful about what gets released. So what we're seeing right now is a filtered version of reality scrubbed, sanitized, controlled. Meanwhile, the people with real power, judges, prosecutors, lawmakers, they're seeing everything. And some of them are starting to hint that what they're seeing is a lot worse than what we're being told. Massie and Khanna didn't have to go public. They could have stayed quiet, but they didn't. And that tells you something. It tells you what they saw bothered them enough to speak out without being able to give details. It suggests the redaction system isn't just protecting victims. It might be protecting perpetrators. And that means the system isn't just flawed, it's broken. Because when the government admits it made major errors and lawmakers say information is being over-redacted, that's not a functioning system. That's damage control. And here's the part no one wants to admit. Every time the government hides information, every time they over-redact, every time they release millions of pages with vague disclaimers, they fuel the very conspiracy theories they claim to fight. Because when people can't see the truth, they fill in the blanks themselves. So where does this leave Trump? In a very uncertain position. We know his name appears in these files. We know there are accusations, whether true or not. We know judges are reviewing unredacted material behind closed doors. And that means one thing. Legal exposure exists. Not certainty, not guilt, but possibility. And in high-profile cases, it's often what happens behind closed doors. The sealed hearings, the private reviews, the unredacted files that matters most. This isn't about whether Trump is going to prison tomorrow. He hasn't been charged with anything new, but the system is moving. Judges are reviewing, investigators are digging, and the gap between what they know and what we know, that's where the real risk is. Because history shows it's not the public headlines that change everything. It's what happens quietly behind the scenes. And right now, that pressure is building. Victims are speaking. Lawmakers are pushing. Mistakes are being exposed. And every new revelation adds more weight. The Epstein files aren't going away. The questions aren't going away. And as long as there's a gap between what the public sees and what the powerful know, people will keep asking who's being protected and why. Because buried inside those files are real names, real accusations, real consequences. And if even a fraction of it turns out to be true, it could change everything. That's the story. That's why it matters. And that's why you should be paying attention.